Welcome to the Disruptors, the show for manufacturers, wholesalers, and industrial businesses, building their ace factor through digital transformation that actually delivers. Every week, we unpack real stories, strategies, and lessons using PSV thinking, a practical framework focused on one thing: driving profits, enabling scale, and building long-term enterprise value. I am Ritesh Shah, CTO at Intuji, and your host. We are here to challenge how you think about tech, operations, and what's possible in your business. Let's get into it. Imagine I am not CTO today, but a director of operations at a manufacturing company. We have been doing some digital stuffs here and there, made things faster here and there as well, but I'm not sure it is what exactly it works. So, and today I am with someone who knows this world inside out, Julian Wallis. Hey, Julian, welcome back.
Very good, mate. Good to be here.
Thanks, mate. So, Julian, we as a company spent 6 months building a better quoting process and tool. It works well. Our sales team like it, but that's all. Is it all right, or it's just a better tool, or what is it like? What's the worth of it?
Depends on what you're saying. If it's delivering value from an operational perspective, obviously it's great. There's a kind of two ways we need to look at it, which is firstly, like any tool or any kind of tech, any digital transformation that we undertake, obviously it needs to work and it needs to actually get results in kind of increasing profitability, enabling scale, building enterprise value. That's kind of the key things. Last one is building enterprise value, and that is, okay, we might have increased profitability, enabled scale, but have we branded this? Have we turned it into a systemized, digitized process and a branded application or something like that there that becomes an asset of the business? Really, that's the key point to that part of it.
When you say an asset, is it the property of the company, like an intellectual property, or what is that like?
Yeah, I guess a lot of people, I feel, overlook this in regards to when they're doing digital transformation or they're building tech or systems internally, but they will build a great process, or they might even have some thought process behind it, an algorithm, or just how they do something a certain way, but they haven't actually turned it into an asset. So yeah, intellectual property, right? So I guess it's about refining that and packaging it up. For example, like you might have a customer portal and it's not branded, right? It's just a website. Then what is it? It's just a website. It's a website like everyone else. If you brand it, you turn it into a hub or you turn it into a portal, give it its own brand and treat it like such. It obviously needs to actually do stuff. It needs to work. It needs to be great. But that's an asset. That's the intellectual property of the business. It could be, as you started off with, like an internal quoting tool. It could be that there where you built it for your industry. You might have built something very specifically, an architect's portal. It could be a quoting tool, whatever. You can release the tool and it's just a tool, but there's a lot less enterprise value there. If you turn it into a brandable asset and it's part of your intellectual property as a business, that's really powerful.
Okay. One of my dilemma here is we, my software development vendor, are working together building this tool for 6 months now. And then one thing it's confusing for me is that we're not building it from scratch, actually. They used this PHP and some open source stuff and plugins. I bought a lot of plugins as well to support that. Do that still count as a IP for me, intellectual property for me? Because I've been using various tools to build it, actually.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I'm certainly no lawyer, so don't take this as legal advice to anyone that's listening. But it's like we're starting to get narrow into like the legal side of it, which is a bit more difficult to actually discuss. But yes, I guess rather than focusing on the plugins or open source platforms, like you don't, just at a broad statement, no, you don't own the intellectual property of that. You won't. That's owned by someone else. It's a third party thing. So you won't own that intellectual property. Broadly speaking, how you arrange those things is your intellectual property, right? That's how you arrange them, how you use those different tools, etc. And there's always a blend of, is it worth building our own custom plugin when we're talking about plugging, we're getting very detailed here, but or do we kind of build our own technology where we own the intellectual property? I'm not so against using third-party libraries or third-party plugins within reason, if that makes sense, when they can be swapped out for something else if they need to be, right? So you're not entirely reliant on that. That means that the intellectual property, e.g. the platform or whatever you built, isn't reliant on one third party or something like that. There you can switch that out to something else and you still have the intellectual property, you still have the asset. What is more of a concern is commercial off-the-shelf systems or SaaS products, for example, that like a warranty portal. There's a lot of SaaS products out there that have a warranty portal, but that's no intellectual property for you as a brand, right? Because you're using someone else's entire product to manage your warranty, which great, that might work. And it might work for your business, but you have no intellectual property. There's nothing that adds value to your business in regards to, except for being efficient and that kind of thing. It might help with that, increasing profitability, increasing your EBITDA, but you don't own any of that intellectual property. So it's like no value to the business. Now, would I recommend going out and building your own warranty portal just on its own? Probably not. If it brought up a broader set of technology or was part of your overall, what we call your operating system or your nucleus, which is essentially the entire backbone of your business. For example, let's say you had an underlying technology. For us, it's in 2GOS, right? But maybe another business would be something else that runs your dealer portal, your distributor portal. It runs your internal quoting tools, that kind of thing. And then on top of that, you essentially add this warranty portal. Then that would be part of your intellectual property. So I guess there's two parts to this. Like you talk about the plugins and the open source frameworks, that's one area. But more what I would be concerned about is like the commercial off-the-shelf stuff, because that you can go and implement that in your business as a full solution, but you don't own any of it.
Makes sense. My brain actually works with analogy. So while you were speaking, I got an analogy like it's a recipe. The vegetable will cook like if you add your own spices, you add your own vegetables and cook something new. That is your thing, your property, your intellectual property kind of thing. And then like with software also, I think that is the way to go. Like with regarding to the intellectual property. Again, like there's another confusion as well. Even the idea around building the tools and everything, I have been using the AI a lot. So I'm quite confused sometimes with this thing, this situation. Do I actually own the idea and the property, everything, or AI owns it because I use this AI to build it from scratch, actually, from everything. From start zero, I was used AI. So do I even own it or what is it?
I think it's a big, that's again, it's you're asking a legal question. I'm not a lawyer, if that makes sense. Can't answer it legally. It's not legal advice. But the main point of it is that with my stuff with AI, like we're not using, I know this for a fact, even for ourselves internally here at 2G, we're not using AI to complete entire projects. It's nowhere near that level, right? So what we're using AI for is to help us, refine things or, ideate and stuff like that there, which for us, meaning like we still own that intellectual property because in my opinion, obviously we've had the idea, we've discussed it, we've used AI as someone to, we're paying them, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's a gray area. If you use AI to build the entire thing, then yes, I would say, I don't know. We haven't come across that scenario ourselves, right? If that makes sense. And if it happens in the future, then I'm not sure about that, right? Like legally, it's a gray area of where that's going to be. When we talk about building your edge factor and that kind of thing as a business with like the projects that we're working on, I don't see AI doing the entire thing for anywhere in the near future.
We do calculations with calculator, but calculator doesn't own it, I guess.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's a legal grey area and has been for a long time regarding the AI stuff, as in we're not sure, what that's going to be, who's going to own it. If you're paying them, if you're not paying them, they introduce stuff like if you're paying for a subscription, well, then you're paying them already, if you know what I mean. So it's kind of like it's going to be almost impossible to manage because 1,000 people could have access to the same thing. 100 million people, whatever, could have access to the same AI tool or whatever you're using. So essentially, like anyone can use it, if that makes any sense. So that's where it is. And that's twofold, meaning like the AI couldn't necessarily claim it. Also, if you're purely relying on AI, then you're going to just be creating what everyone else is creating. It's that simple. So there's no intellectual property in that anyway, because everyone else is just creating what you're creating. There's two parts to that.
Okay, I get it now, actually. The other thing I wanted to discuss today is like we are into manufacturing for ASIS now. We are not actually a software development company. Do we even care about the software digital tools that we build and then market as an IP for us? Is it a value for us? And if it's a value, how is it?
Yeah, I think to me, every company is a technology company these days. That's the facts. That the ones that are winning are, they might be manufacturers or industrial businesses, but they can only do what they can do the way they do it because of technology. That to me is a winning business, and that means that they are a technology business. It looks different for every kind of business of how it actually works, but I think it creates incredible value. Like when we're talking about enterprise value and intellectual property, they kind of go hand in hand. Like when we're talking about intellectual property and assets, that really the main point of that is the value of the business, the enterprise value of the business. If someone comes into a business that's led by technology, the business is incredibly well systemized, it's incredibly well digitized, and it's scalable. And on top of that, all of those systems are owned by that company. There's intellectual property there. They've branded it. That is an incredibly powerful business, right? Versus a business where they might be still successful, but they are running on manual processes. So much knowledge is in people's heads. It's not systemized. It's not digitized. They might be still a good business, but tell me which one you want to buy. I want to buy the one that's got technology that I can just pump more advertising, more marketing, or a few more people, but we can scale the business infinitely. Well, at least, theoretically infinitely, because the technology, the systems, the digitization is doing the heavy lifting, not the individuals. Right? No one wants to buy something that is individual heavy, meaning like human resource heavy, people management heavy. No one wants to do that. And that's the point about this intellectual property. If you've got systems, e.g. for us in 2GOS, that enables us to do what other people can't because of that system, that's powerful.
Okay, makes sense now. I have another question as well. Last year, actually, we built a custom integration. We were working on NetSuite. E-commerce has the order data, but the NetSuite didn't know about it. So we as a manufacturing built a e-commerce custom integration tool between e-commerce and NetSuite. That is our ERP. So that custom module or integration, whatever we call it, is it an IP?
Yes, I would say that's intellectual property. If it's been a custom integration has been built between NetSuite and the e-commerce thing, and yes, that would be part of your intellectual property. Now, you could argue that that's not a lot of intellectual property because it's just an integration, right? Like it's not really like, this is the point. If you look at things in silos where like if you're just looking, your integration, then on its own, it doesn't really mean much, right? But if it's part of a massive ecosystem, that integration powers other tools like quoting or the B2B portal or the customer portal or the warranty portal, all of these things. And suddenly, yes, it is part of that IP. I think it's a bit confusing or a bit not necessarily a great thing to just focus on the specific integration, right? Because it's like, well, that integration on its own is not IP. Like as in the integration itself is like, well, it's not IP, right? On its own. But it's part of the bigger ecosystem. It's like, well, it depends on what it's enabling and what it's not enabling. Like people aren't going to put an integration between their e-commerce website and NetSuite on their balance sheet as an asset. How's that any different from someone else that's got an integration? It's not. It's no different. But if it enables you, if it's part of your edge factor, if it's part of the whole broader ecosystem, then yes, it becomes part of that intellectual property.
One of the friends company actually had a situation like this as well. They built a tool like that was in their operating system with a software vendor, development vendor. So it took years to build them, and they paid for it. Now they wanted to make it their IP as their asset, register that asset, but the software development company owned it actually rather than they who actually invested. What do you say? I have to say about it. Like say software development company owning the IP.
Yeah, we've heard it as well with clients and other people that get stuck in this situation. We've had some large clients that have had significantly large investments that have had this very specific situation as well. But it's like, it's very difficult. Like it's on a case by case basis. In general, my advice is you should own the IP. If you're going to have the edge factor and you're going to create, it's going to be a valuable asset for the business, you have to own the IP. That's how we operate. Anything that we create specifically for clients, our master services agreement will typically, unless in exceptional circumstances or cases, but in general, it states that anything that we do for clients specifically is their intellectual property, right? So they own it. If it's not, then obviously they aren't creating an enterprise value. They're not creating an intellectual property asset, right? What they're doing is just, it might be helping the business, but they aren't building an asset. So generally, I don't advise like you should own the IP of it, right? Unless there's a very specific agreement in certain scenarios. But in general, the main thing should be, you own the IP, and that's how we operate.
Okay, now it gives me an idea actually. As a business, we have been building a lot of tools like this for ages now. If we don't know that we could own the IP, we might be even sitting in a gold mine of digital transformation, digital tool, like that could be our asset, and then the company's value shoot the rockets actually.
There are businesses that are definitely sitting on some great tools and some great ideas even, but they're just, where most of it gets let down is the execution of it. That's honestly the main thing. How you deliver that technology and experience at scale is your edge factor and is your asset. If it lives in silos, the core idea might be there, whatever else. But if it's not executed properly, it's not really going to become an incredibly good asset.
So yeah, anyone who's building a digital tool, a digital asset, they need to be thinking, have a PSV thinking in mind. If they have that, the value is there. If the value is there, IP is there, I guess.
Or if the IP is there, the value will be there. That's the main point.
Makes sense. So me as a company, if I ever have to start building up a new tool, where do I start? Like, how do I think about the IP, asset, billing value, and everything? How do I start with this?
Yeah, well, the foundational part of it is you need to build something that's actually of value, like meaning like you need to build something that genuinely solves a problem or problems or delivers on an opportunity or enables a business in an industry to scale like it never has. Or you've got to say anything. You've got to have value to create value. Like at the end of the day, you can't just do a brand about and build some portal and say, oh, it's got a brand, so it's got a value. If it's a piece of crap, if it doesn't work properly, if it doesn't create value, it's not worth anything. So the ultimate thing is that you create something that no one else has done. You create something that is incredibly valuable that competitors don't have, the industry doesn't have, etc. And that's the main thing. Then that's the 80%. We've actually got to create something genuinely innovative that solves problems or takes hold of opportunities. The 20% is now we need to execute it in regards to the branding part of it and the packaging part of it, right? Which is we need to brand it, right? It needs to be incredibly well designed. It needs to be incredibly easy to use. All of these kind of things. It needs to be deeply connected with the business, right? We shouldn't have 8 different places you go to get 8 different experiences or 8 different tools or 8 different things for the business. You've got warranty portal over here. You've got your B2B assets over here. You've got this and that and everything else in all different places. That's the 20%. But the 80% is, I guess, actually coming up with that foundational layer of that tech of what problems are we going to solve and how are we going to solve them, right? Because you can talk about the branding part of it or putting it on your balance sheet, whatever you want to do. But if you haven't actually created something that's worth anything, well, then there's no point doing that.
The custom integration there is, you mentioned that it might not be intellectual property, like the custom integration as in integration between ERP and the e-commerce. Sometimes you're saying that if it's creating value for me, actually, why isn't that integration IP for me? Because I didn't have to, I reduced the manual tasks that my operation team had to do. It's scalable.
It is, don't get me wrong, as in it's IP, but like it's not something to sing from the hilltops about, right? Like as in most businesses of any scale have some level of integration, right? Some have better than others. That's the point, but it's pretty par for the course. Like if you don't have integration, what are you doing? So how valuable is it really? My point, the way I look at it is I look at it as the bare minimum. Like it's like a basics. Like if I ever looked at a business and they said, oh, yeah, we've got an integration with custom built integration between NetSuite and our website. So we've got good intellectual property. I would just say, no, you don't. It's just an integration. If they come to me and say, we've built into GOS, right? And it has all of these facets in it. It's systemized all of these processes from X to X. This is what it enables us to do. This is how we can do it. It integrates with this, and this, and this. Yeah, now we're talking. Yeah, that's intellectual property. You just have an integration between one system and another. Well, so does everyone else. It's not worth anything. Yes, don't get me wrong. Like it's worth something, but like we're talking about building proper intellectual property assets here, right? Something that is worth millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions in some case. Data, how we structure the data, all of this. And that's why there's no single answer to this. It looks different for every different business, but this is the point. You've got to package it up again, it comes back to how digitally enabled are you as a business? How systemized are you as a business? And is that in one system, in as minimal systems as possible? And is it branded?
In your master service agreement, you mentioned about the IP and all that kind of thing. Can you elaborate more about it? What is it like and how? Because I've seen some contracts, but it's quite confusing for me.
Basically, in simple terms, it's dependent on different vendors. It's depending on different scenarios. But for us, we basically, in general, the majority of cases, we're assigning anything that we create for clients is owned by the clients once we've been paid. Right? So they own that intellectual property. Without getting too technical, there's obviously things that we own in regards to our intellectual property that we use on projects and things that we retain ownership of. But in general, the 80-20 rule, right? Clients own the work that we create for them. And that's for us. Now, every other situation is different. But the main thing is that we want to help clients create their edge factor. We want to help them create this asset. And so if in order to create that asset, they actually have to own it.
Lastly, what do you have to say to a company like me? You need to build the IP right now, but how do you start? And 2 points, like how do you start and then how do I maintain it if I have to?
I come back to earlier what I said, like you don't create IP with something that's not valuable, e.g. just the integration thing that we discussed. Like you have to create something that's of value and it's actually helpful. It actually solves problems. It's actually innovative. And innovation that's not practical is not innovation, right? It's got to be something that creates value. That's how you create value, you give someone else value. That's how you create an IP asset or like that's actually of value. I wouldn't necessarily try and go out there and start by talking about how do we create IP, which, it's not a bad question, but it's more like how do we systemize and digitize the business in a repeatable, scalable way? Then how do we package that up and brand it? That's our IP.
Okay, now it makes sense. So we basically build a tool product that creates a value. IP is byproduct of it.
100%. Well, how do you create value without a product that creates value? You can design a logo or call it whatever you want. If it's a piece of crap and it doesn't do anything, or your system, it's not valuable.
Do we regard IP logo as an IP or not?
That's a branding discussion, right? That's not to do with digital transformation necessarily, but yes, as in a brand is intellectual property. Yes. Now it's not necessarily in our wheelhouse, but when we're creating customer portals or public facing technology or technology that may not even be entirely public facing, but is part of our DNA as a brand, it should be branded, right? Because that's how there's a big difference between someone, I've said this before, but coming to us and saying, wow, In2GOS is incredible, versus saying, oh, you've got some good software. No, it's In2GOS, right? Like there's a big difference between that. All it is it's a visual representation. It's a brand of what you've done with your digital transformation.
Thanks, Julian. I think I'll wrap it up here with this episode. It was a good conversation catching up with you again. And then next week we'll discuss furthermore on new topic for sure. Thanks, Julian, for your time.
Thanks, mate. Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Disruptors. If you are serious about unlocking your ace factor, the thing that sets your business apart and helps it grow sustainably, don't forget to follow, share, and leave a quick review. We will be back next week with more real-world insights and no-flop conversations on how to rethink your systems, modernize operations, and build value that lasts. Until then, stay sharp, stay focused, and keep disrupting.